Welcome to VLGA Connect. My name is Catherine Arndt and I'm the Chief of the VLGA Connect studio. I hope you enjoy today's Connect episode brought to you by the VLGA, the national broadcaster on all things local government.
Hello everyone, welcome to the weekly governance update from VLGA Connect, brought to you by Hunt and Hunt Lawyers. And joining me as always, the Chief of Staff of the VLGA to dissect the week's local government news with a fine something. Stephen Cooper.
Hello, Chris, and I'm glad we're not trisecting, and I'm not sure what into four would be, what sort of secting that would be.
Have you got your scalpel ready?
Oh, let's go.
Let's go. All right. Easter. How was Easter for you?
Easter was lovely, and I would have thought most people in Victoria would have found that Good Friday, Easter Saturday and Sunday were beautiful, and we might have all got a bit wet on Monday.
Yes, true. And there's a couple of Easter things we want to talk about in just a moment. But before I do, and before we forget, last week I lamented, somewhat jokingly, that the Minister had a habit of putting out significant news just after we'd put the governance update to bed. And Steve, he reached out to you on Twitter to dispel that vicious rumour.
Well, I'm not sure he dispelled it, Chris. And the other thing is, I'm not sure you were jokingly. I think you take us much more seriously than that. But the minister, his tweet basically said, yes, he admitted that the timing of government announcements was based, intentionally just after we record, Chris.
No, he did not say that, Stephen.
Well, he said something like that, but then he had a rolling around the floor laughing emoji.
He did. He said, can confirm, Stephen, there's no coincidence regarding the timing of announcements being about half an hour after you've finished filming your show. Laughing face.
Laughing emoji.
So I've just got that. No coincidence means he's saying that's true.
Absolutely. I thought I had him for a moment there until I got to the fourth line.
Yes, yeah. All right. So, I mean, you said straight to the pool room. I think that was a nice little exchange, Steve. So, well done.
I don't think I can top that, Chris.
All right, so let's talk about a couple of Easter-related things. I know you want to send out some good wishes to the folks at Northern Grampians because another very successful stall gift campaign this year.
And I know the council and councillors and local tourism agencies and community groups have been actively promoting the stall gift. And I think props to Mayor Tony Driscoll and to the CEO Leanna Thompson, to the Shire staff and the stall communities on another terrific event. And Chris, there was a local government flavour in the results.
There was. This sort of came out a day or two after, didn't it? The winner of the stall gift is one of our own, Steve.
Well, I think Andrew Day at the CEO at Manningham couldn't contain himself and needed to make a little tweet about that, and I don't blame him.
And I should say the male winner, because of course there's two winners.
Exactly, which are on a equal pedestal, if you like, Chris. But yeah, so Andrew announced on LinkedIn, I saw that Harrison Kerr is in the engineering team at Manningham Council. So congratulations to Harrison and by default to his colleagues at Manningham Council.
Fantastic. Of course, there's a great story about a planning officer at one of the other councils that has gone on to be an international cycling commentator. I'm talking about Matthew Keenan. Steve, are you aware of that story?
No, I didn't know that.
It's not unheard of. I think he was in planning. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong. It's not unheard of for someone to use their local government career as a stepping up into international fame. Can we put it? I'm drawing a long bow, but there you go.
Rightly so. So what else happened at Easter?
Well, the other big thing that I was keeping an eye on, and there was a great website to be able to track the Mayor of Mornington Peninsula, Anthony Marsh, as he paddled around Port Phillip and Western Port Bay for charity over Easter. I thought this was just a great initiative to do. He said to me, Steve, mayoral balls aren't his thing. But perhaps an Easter paddle is, and he raised $35,000 for the local SES and Coast Guard through that effort. So kudos, well done.
And the website was terrific. You could see the route and you could see where the mayor was at any particular time. It was terrific. The good thing I liked about it, Chris, and this is probably a bit of personal bias on my part, is I think we have to be careful about those kind of mayoral events, not the paddle, but the balls and so on, that sometimes there is a cost to the community in running them, and maybe what purportedly goes to charities mightn't all get there. So, transparency over those things. But I thought props to Anthony Marsh as well.
Absolutely. Well done, Anthony. What a great initiative. Now, let's get a bit more serious. The West Wimmera Shire is in the news just in the past 24 hours or so, Steve, and I did hear the interview that the Mayor of West Wimmera gave to the ABC this morning as we record this. And the issue that's sort of under the microscope here is the council's decision to not fly the rainbow flag on Ida Hobbit Day. But it's actually going a bit deeper than that, isn't it?
Well, I think it went deeper, Chris, and we'll try to keep a governance lens on this. It went deeper, I think, because of the explanation that was given, or the explanations that were given for that decision, which really deserve a bit of unpacking, I would say, lest anyone be misled.
So the Mayor, Bruce Meyer, I think it said, was on ABC Radio to explain the council's decision. It's a majority decision, but some of the comments that he made have come under fire, Steve.
So, yes, Chris, the Mayor commented that there would be a consequence of making this decision that would cause other requests that seemed a bit outlandish to flow to the council eventually as well.
Yes, the word pedophilia was used. The issue of allowing 12-year-old girls to marry was used. I thought that's where it jumped the shark a bit, to be frank.
Just a bit, Chris. Let's be clear. The decision in front of the council was whether to fly a flag, and let's end on that. The other part I thought was interesting was that the Mayor gave the sense that this was a small group who were agitating and didn't reflect the views of the community. Now, there are small groups that agitate over a whole lot of things, but they can't be discounted on that basis that the Act actually requires in the role of the council to govern for the whole municipality. So there's an element of, just making sure that we listen when groups are making particular requests.
So, Steve, let's not also lose sight of the fact that councils have autonomy to make the decisions that they think are the best decisions for their community. You've got a council here, a small council, 3,800 residents, I think. You've got 5 elected councillors having to make these decisions, and we never want to detract from the autonomy they have to make those decisions.
Absolutely, Chris. And I think that goes to the framing because, again, in the interview, the Mayor commented that this was a moral issue and not the business of local government, and therefore the council had no business in involving itself in a moral issue. And I think at the heart of my view on this, that is the point with which I would take most issue. That, in fact, there's a few areas in the Local Government Act and in other acts that point to the fact that the council has every right to involve itself in this issue. Going right back to the governance and integrity regulations that require councillors to receive an induction on giving effect to gender equality, diversity and inclusiveness. So there's a really strong signal there that the council has a role. The other part, I would say, Chris, is that councils are required to prepare a municipal public health and wellbeing plan. And I think the other councillor who was in favour of the flying flag made the point that youth suicide amongst the LGBT plus cohort is an extraordinarily serious problem. And I think for any council who has prepared a municipal public health plan, a public health and wellbeing plan that has not given some consideration to the harms to particularly young people in the LGBT plus community, then you'd possibly want to go back and have a look at your plan.
Good point and well made, Steve. For me, this brings up a bit of that old roads, rates and rubbish argument. And, these days councils do and are involved in so much more. In fact, VLGA CEO Catherine Arndt did a very good opinion piece very recently on that very topic. Times have changed, and I think the reaction to this is showing us that people expect councils to be involved in these issues.
That's true, Chris. And we know that the rural councils do a lot with not much.
Yeah.
And again, I think returning to the point that you made earlier, ultimately the council has a role in making a decision. And sometimes Sometimes the council might need to say no. Sometimes it will be a leader and perhaps go to places that the community is not quite ready for. But I think to sort of be commenting that we've got, effectively an LGBT plus community living quite peacefully and in harmony without actually going out and asking those people if that's their view is a bit harmful. And the other thing I think, Chris, is it's not just around sort of saying, oh, well, there's been a pylon, we'll fly the flag. We need to make decisions for the right reasons. And that is where the framing of the decision becomes really important, because it's vital that we don't do harm to people on really sensitive issues like this.
As you say, it's not whether to address the issue, it's how you manage it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which I thought was a good point. All right, look, there's lots out there. There's more every minute, actually, when I look. If you look at Twitter, Facebook, etc., ABC reporting, reaction coming from Rainbow, local government, etc. This one might go on for a couple of days at least, I would think.
I would say so.
All right, thanks, Steve. Let us, and we'll put a link to the interview in the show notes if anyone wants to dig a little deeper into that issue. Another report came out this week from the Integrity and Oversight Committee, Steve, which might, around the edges, have some implications for local government.
I would say so, Chris. This is a state parliamentary committee that was looking at sort of the education functions of integrity agencies generally. The VLGA did make a submission, and it was pleasing to see a number of references to the VLGA submission in the footnotes to each of the recommendations. But fundamentally, the recommendations were around good practice in terms of accessibility of reports, so people know what the process is, capturing data to ensure that the various cohorts that are making complaints, and there were specific references to IBAC and the police, so that we know who's making complaints and who's not. And some good practice around publication. That's my sort of cut back version, but it is worthwhile, I think, for compliance people in councils to have a look at this report.
Some of this also links into the issue we were just talking about with West Wimmera Shire in a way, doesn't it?
Oh, look, it does, because there were quite specific references to the LGBT plus community and capturing data and ensuring that the human rights of a substantial cohort of people in the community are not being affected because there are barriers to accessibility.
All right, so I'll pop the link to that report in the show notes if anyone wants to have a look at that. As I said, there's not a lot about local government in it, but some recommendations around IBAC and the Ombudsman that might have some implications.
Yeah, I think it's about making the link and sort of drawing the inference about where the similarities lie, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. Again, on a legislative bent, this one's out of New South Wales, and I wondered about anything that might correlate in Victoria with this, Steve. New South Wales councils have been told to be careful about meeting their obligations, is what I'm trying to say, with the Modern Slavery Act that's come in that state. I don't think we've got a corresponding act here at this point, do we?
I'm not aware that we do, Chris, but I think, again, it's an issue that is worth looking at sort of from an ethical lens. In management of all of our assets, in the operation of processes, that we should be looking end to end. And, we know in procurement that ethical procurement doesn't start at the point where we make the purchasing decision. It starts with doing due diligence around how the whatever the product is was produced. What's the environmental impact? What's the social impact in terms of who we're buying from? So, we already, when we're in procurement processes, Chris, make sure that we check the health and safety standards of our suppliers, because it would be easy for someone to shortcut there and, come up with a cheaper price. And I think, so New South Wales have got a new piece of legislation that says if you are making purchasing decisions, do some due diligence and show us how you're doing due diligence to ensure that what's called modern slavery, or basically wage theft, hasn't contributed to a cheaper price.
All right, so look out for that one, because once it happens in one place, it often follows on eventually in others if it's a good idea, and I can't see why that wouldn't be one that might flow through.
I would have thought so, Chris. I think, socially, and it's important for us, to be ethical organisations.
Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this program talking about the election campaign. There's plenty of material out there from other sources, but I know you are taking an interest in the way election signage is being dealt with from a council perspective, and there's a bit going on in Brisbane, I hear.
Oh, is there ever? So a candidate actually tweeted on Twitter, would you believe, Chris? Who would have thought that the council had served notice on that particular councillor that his sign wasn't compliant because it's more than 28 days out from the election and he needed to take it down. And he has embarked on a campaign of civil disobedience,
Right.
which took me to the, what would I call it, the local law. So, Chris, there's a device called the Advertising Devices Design and Assessment Rule, which is a subsidiary document to the local law that for Brisbane City Council, which lays out some extraordinary requirements for election signs in residential areas, including that the number of signs for the various sorts of elections won't exceed a particular number in each case.
Right.
And I was actually speculating as to how the council staff were going to run around the municipality counting the signs to keep them under the limit.
So, for example, a federal election candidate can have no more than 150 signs in the electorate.
Exactly, but a mayoral candidate, and remembering that Brisbane City covers multiple electorates, a mayoral candidate may have 500 signs.
Oh,
wow. And how would you ever know?
You're right. So, depending on how many candidates are, the number of candidates times 150 is a pretty big number. I think I see the point you're making.
And look, again, I'm reluctant to criticise. The Brisbane City Council may have had a terrific reason for embarking on such a detailed local law, but it's not great to have a local law that encourages very public civil disobedience. And I'm not sure that we haven't, what's the saying, Chris? Cracked a walnut by dropping an anvil on it.
Yeah. And look, it's also not great for the approaches from one electorate to the next or one council to the next to be different, for people to understand what is the right thing to do. I did note in this material that you dug out, for a private property election sign, the location has to be registered with the council before the sign is put up. Does that apply here?
Not in Victoria.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. It seems rather bureaucratic and prescriptive, doesn't it?
There might be an opportunity for red tape reduction, Chris.
Yes, there might. And harmonisation, Steve.
Oh, which is actually one of the features of having the control under the state planning instruments, as Andrew Gunter from Hunt and Hunt so lucidly explained a few weeks ago.
All right, I'm not going to dig all that stuff out and read it, but if you've got some links, Steve, I'll be happy to put them in the show notes for those of us, for those who are watching or listening that would like to go down those rabbit holes.
They're winging their way to you, Chris.
Excellent. Now, we've got some classified notices before we finish. 3 CEO appointments in Victoria happened on the cusp of Easter, Steve. You might have seen these. So I want to send out our customary congratulations on CEO appointments. Tammy Smith, who's been acting for a while at Yarri Ambiac, now has been confirmed in the role, replacing, of course, Jessie Holmes, who's moved off to a state role. So well done to Tammy.
Yeah, and all I heard on that one, Chris, was that it was a unanimous decision. The council's really happy with the appointment it's made. And so good luck to Tammy.
And I think I read they had 28 applications, which I thought was a good number for a small shire like that.
That's terrific. Beautiful spot, Warwick-Nabil too, I should actually say, Chris. Yeah. But great news for Tammy and for the council.
All the best to Tammy. Now up to Mildura, where again the acting Martin Hawson, who's been at the council for around 20 years, local boy, now confirmed in the role, and the first locally born and raised CEO for over 20 years at Mildura. So congratulations to Martin. Yeah, Martin, was formerly the Director of Community Services, or words to that effect, and a very decent fellow, having met Martin. So good luck to him. And someone I don't know has got the gig at Swan Hill Rural City Council. I'm not sure if you know Scott Barber, do you, Steve?
No, I don't know Scott Barber. I know Swan Hill quite well, Chris, but no.
I knew that. So Scott apparently used to work for Golden Murray Water, was at Murray Shire Council. He's coming from Wagga Wagga City Council to take up the role as CEO at Swan Hill in the next month or so. So well done, Scott.
Good stuff.
There's 4 left on the list, Steve. Not counting any that might pop up between the time these get resolved. And they are Darebin, Wodonga, Moyne, and there's one more.
But you have reminded me, we do know, as at the time of recording this show, that the monitors for Darebin, for Moira and for Wodonga have not yet been announced.
We expect they'll be announced within about half an hour of us pressing stop on the record.
You know what the minister's like, Chris.
The other one's Alpine. Steve, it's just come to me. You gave me a moment to reflect, and there it is. And look, we need to finish off on a sad note. I was stunned to read on LinkedIn this week about the passing of Terry Bramham from Macquarie Lawyers, who's such a well-known name around local government. Many a time I've sat in a room with Terry imparting his excellent advice about meeting procedure, local government law, etc. He's passed away after an illness, and the sector is all the worse off for losing him.
Chris, I don't think outpouring of grief does justice to the loss of Terry. Very fondly thought of as a human being and a very good lawyer. And I always thought, Chris, that one of the, I don't know if it's a dubious joy, but one of the roles that governance managers and coordinators get cast with at times is someone wandering into your office and saying, I've got this issue, which lawyer should I use? And the thing with Terry was that if the issue involved, managing a difficult situation or something where someone was going to be unhappy with the result, but happy about the process, Terry was the guy that you would think of. Can I just, a couple of things I'll add to that, Chris? And again, it's not for me to provide chapter and verse Terry's life, but I do know a couple of things that I'm aware of that I think are worth saying. And in fact, Rhys Thomas, who listens, posted on Twitter that he got to walk with Terry around the Ray Bramham Gardens, a lovely garden in St George's Road in Preston. And Ray Bramham was Terry's father, a long-serving city engineer at Preston. So Terry really did grow up with local government in his veins and understood the business. I first met Terry when he was with Home Wilkinson Lowry, which I'll come back to in a moment. Probably in the late 1980s, I would say, Chris. They were in Nauru House. And in the mid-90s, Terry took a bit of a sabbatical from being a lawyer. And I recall meeting him. He'd hired a little serviced office in East Kew. He was driving around, and it might have been his wife's red Ford Laser. It wasn't the accoutrements of a lawyer. And we talked about change and the fact that he was having a think about what he wanted to do next, and that maybe partnership in a big law firm wasn't for him. Now, Home Wilkinson Lowry became the HWL in HWL Ebsworth, a very big law firm. And they had Home Wilkinson Lowry had a good local government practice. So Terry spending that bit of time thinking is what became Macquarie Lawyers and Strategists, or now Macquarie Local Government Lawyers. And it was always his intention to service local government, but to do it in a way that was more than just the legal part, that, the people. And as you said, there's been a tremendous outpouring from people who knew Terry really well and the contribution that he made. So I just think, condolences to all of Terry's family, to Georgie, to Peter Lucas, who's worked with Terry for a long time, to Ian Robb and the team at Macquarie, our deepest sympathies, and Vale Terry.
Can't say any more than that, Steve. Vale Terry. And you mentioned Peter Lucas there. Here's another one I had on speed dial for a number of years. Always very accessible, the both of them, actually. So on that sad note, we'll wrap up the governance update for another week. Minister, you can press send on that announcement about the monitors if it's ready to go. We're only joking, I think. And we'll be back with another governance update next week. Thanks, Steve.
Cheers, Chris.
And thanks to Hunt & Hunt Lawyers for being our sponsors here on the Governance Update from VLGA Connect.